Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the war in Iran. I'm certain of that. And it's deeper than that. I am now of the opinion that he was likely sacrificed. And I promise you on everything, that when Savannah, my manager, came down the stairs and delivered the news that Charlie had been shot, I went into my husband's office and I cried, and I immediately said to him, he was betrayed. Charlie was betrayed. And my husband said back to me, you don't know that. We don't know anything yet. And I said, I know. Now, empirically, that argument fails. I get it. But no one can explain why or how I had the sense of dread in the very week leading up to Charlie's assassination. No one can offer why I knew that there was danger coming specifically to a school, and why I felt that it was related to bees, why the feeling was so overwhelming that I hired extra security and took my podcast off air and pulled my children out of school. I had never experienced a dread like that in my life, ever. No one also can explain or even offer an explanation as to how exactly it is that Charlie knew he was going to die young, and that his death would specifically be related to Turning Point USA. He said he knew from the moment he signed on the dotted line that he was going to die young. What exactly is the expert explanation for that deep internal knowing that he had that has now been proven correct? I'll tell you, there isn't one. What Charlie sensed was obviously right. And the moment that Charlie was shot, I knew what happened to him was not random, okay? He was betrayed. Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the war in Iran. I'm certain of that. And it's deeper than that. I am now of the opinion that he was likely sacrificed.
I wanted to share something. After a long time of carrying this with me. My name is Shoshana Strog. I went through sexual abuse in my childhood by both of my parents. The sexual abuse was filmed, which means it was used for child pornography. Recently, a number of memories came back to me of the assault itself. I understood that it was probably also a ritual abuse. I contacted a woman on Facebook who tells a lot about ritual abuse that she also went through, and she referred me to someone named Nama Goldberg. Nama Goldberg, in fact, she told me that. She has a lot of information about ritual abuse. It took me a few days to contact Nama Goldberg, and when I contacted her, she was immediately available in an instant, and it seemed like she had been waiting on me to contact. And she actually sent me some kind of article that had just been published. I wasn't able to read the article to begin with, because of course it scared me very, very much. Actually, I won't tell you all the details, but what happened in my interaction with Nama Goldberg, it is that she actually hinted to me quite clearly, as it were, as if she was supporting me. But I actually realized that they have all of these pornographic videos. Nama literally said that she could ask someone to get these videos, which means that she has a direct connection to the person who has all this information. And it kind of scared me, and she threatened me that these videos can be published. And then I realized that this was a much, much more organized crime. I was also sexually abused as a child, but also actually, apparently, that I'm currently under threat from larger criminal figures. I feel threatened. I filed a complaint with the police about my parents before I left the country. Now I returned to Israel in panic because I realized that I was actually threatened by criminal figures. I asked Israel police to protect me both from these criminal figures and from my family. I would be happy for the public's help in spreading this to every possible party. And, of course, I will contact the police directly later day. Of course, this is very important. Thank you all for your support. I really appreciate the help in this regard.
The ritual abuse is different than other forms of sex trafficking because it's more than just being forced to have sexual relations with someone against your will. It's sacrifices of animals and people. It's in the middle of the night being taken from your home and taken to an undisclosed location. And sometimes they don't remember where they were taken, so then they don't even know if it was real. Sometimes it's underground. And then these are rituals, meaning it happens on a regular basis. So whether it's once a week, once a month, but it happens regularly for years and years and years.
Shoshana Struk, the daughter of Israeli minister Orit Struk, has been found dead. The 34-year-old was found dead at her home in northern Israel. The circumstances of her death remain unclear, and the police have opened an investigation into the case. But a small protest took place in Jerusalem after her death because of her shocking history. Since last year, Shoshana had been accusing her own parents of sexually abusing her and forcing her to take part in sexual abuse rituals. She accused her mother, the Israeli settlements minister, of taking her to what she called pedophile ceremonies. From the age of only 2.5, Shoshana Struk had put up multiple social media posts and testimonies about the abuse. She had also filed a police complaint. The Israeli police have said that they were unable to verify any of Shoshana Struk's claims. But the details of their investigation is still unclear. What's more, an Israeli court had issued a gag order on the investigation, which prevented Israeli media from publishing details about the case.
Minister's daughter found dead after accusing parents of abuse. What's the story? The death of Shoshana Struk, the 34-year-old daughter of Israeli settlement minister Orit Struk, has sparked widespread controversy across Israel, particularly in light of serious allegations she previously made against her parents. According to Israeli media reports, Shoshana was found dead inside her home, prompting authorities to launch an investigation into the circumstances surrounding her death. No official cause of death has been confirmed so far. Her mother, Minister Orit Struk, publicly mourned her daughter in a post on social media, expressing deep sorrow over the loss. However, the case quickly moved beyond a personal tragedy and into the public spotlight due to Shoshana's past statements.
Looking with lust is not a sin in Judaism.
What's the stance on pornography?
So pornography, when I'm asked this question...
Just to put you on the spot.
You did indeed. Okay, so my answer, when it's raised on my radio show, I have a male-female hour, and I'm very open about sexual subjects. I always ask if a wife calls me and says, my husband looks at pornography, I found on his computer, I have one question. How is your life of intimacy with your husband? Is it good? In other words, is the pornography in lieu of you or in addition to you? Mm-hmm. And I know this is not a religious answer, and mm-hmm. I'm not even giving a religious answer. I'm giving what I think is a moral and realistic answer. Men want variety. And if adultery is a substitute for, if pornography is a substitute for one's wife, it's awful. If it's a substitute for adultery, it's not awful. That is my unpredictable answer.
Well, there is a clinical rule of thumb that's akin to that, I would say. If you're trying to decide clinically whether someone's partaking in a habit, say use of alcohol, has reached the threshold of clinical significance, one of the things you do is ask the person you're assessing, is it interfering with your employment? Has it got you in trouble with the law? Is your family complaining? Does it stop you from doing other things that you should be doing? And so the judgment isn't the use of the forbidden substance itself. It is in some sense consequentialist. And I'm not saying that that's an absolute, but it is a hallmark of clinical judgment.
As a child, my next guest was used also in worshiping the devil, participated in human sacrifice rituals and cannibalism. She says her family has been involved in rituals for generations. She is currently in extensive therapy, suffers from multiple personality disorder, meaning she's blocked out many of the terrifying and painful memories of her childhood, Meet Rachel, who is also in disguise to protect her identity. My next guest treats ritually abused children in her therapist practice. She feels that the problem is much more widespread than any of us can imagine. Says there's no doubt in her mind that the children and adults that she treats are telling the truth. Tina Grossman, we're glad to have all of you join us here on the show. You come from generations of ritualistic abuse?
Yes, my family has an extensive family tree, and they keep track of who's been involved and who hasn't been involved. And it's gone back to like 1700.
And so you were ritually abused.
I was born into a family that believes in this.
And does everyone else think it's a nice Jewish family? From the outside, you appear to be a nice Jewish girl.
Definitely.
And you all are worshiping the devil inside the home?
Right. There's other Jewish families across the country. It's not just my own family.
Really? And so who knows about it? Lots of people now.
I talked to a police detective in the Chicago area, and several of my friends know, and I've spoke publicly before. And
so when you were brought up in this kind of evilness, did you just think it was normal?
I blocked out a lot of the memories I had because of my multiple personality disorder. But yes, I mean, it's like if you grow up with something, you think it's normal. Mm-hmm. I always thought.
So what kinds of things? You don't have to give us the gory details, but what kinds of things went on in the family?
Well, there would be rituals in which babies would be sacrificed, and you would have to,
Whose babies?
There were people who bred babies in our family. No one would know about it. A lot of people were overweight, so you couldn't tell if they were pregnant or not, or they would supposedly go away for a while and then come back.
Now, you were telling us earlier that that the practice with the Kilroy death was a religion called
Palamayombe, which not all people who practice Palamayombe obviously sacrifice. I think what we're looking at is a worship of evil here.
Right.
Taking normal or standard religions and perverting them to the worship of evil.
Right. And I just want to emphasize that you don't have to be Caribbean to do it.
No.
Yes.
The other thing I want to point out, not all Jewish people sacrifice babies. I mean, that's not a very typical thing. I just want to point that out.
This is the first time I heard of any Jewish people sacrificing babies.
Looking with lust is not a sin in Judaism.
What's the stance on pornography?
So pornography, when I'm asked this question...
Just to put you on the spot.
You did indeed. Okay, so my answer, when it's raised on my radio show, I have a male-female hour, and I'm very open about sexual subjects. I always ask if a wife calls me and says, my husband looks at pornography, I found on his computer, I have one question. How is your life of intimacy with your husband? Is it good? In other words, is the pornography in lieu of you or in addition to you? Mm-hmm. And I know this is not a religious answer, and mm-hmm. I'm not even giving a religious answer. I'm giving what I think is a moral and realistic answer. Men want variety. And if adultery is a substitute if pornography is a substitute for one's wife, it's awful. If it's a substitute for adultery, it's not awful. That is my unpredictable answer.
Well, there is a clinical rule of thumb that's akin to that, I would say. If you're trying to decide clinically whether someone's partaking in a habit, say use of alcohol, has reached the threshold of clinical significance, one of the things you do is ask the person you're assessing, is it interfering with your employment? Has it got you in trouble with the law? Is your family complaining? Does it stop you from doing other things that you should be doing? And so the judgment isn't the use of the forbidden substance itself. It is in some sense consequentialist. And I'm not saying that that's an absolute, but it is a hallmark of clinical judgment.
My name is Anya Wick, but at birth, I was Anya Beth Epstein. I was born in a house in Boulder. In 2015, I changed my name to Owen Theodore Epstein. In 2020, I changed it again to Anna Petrova I had realized what I was surrounded by my entire life and thought I could hide from it. And I married a man named Wick, kept that name, and decided to start going public with my story just a few months ago. I had chemically driven amnesia the majority of my life. I am Jeff Epstein's niece, and I was raised as a sex slave.
The ritual abuse is different than other forms of sex trafficking because it's more than just being forced to have sexual relations with someone against your will. It's sacrifices of animals and people. It's in the middle of the night being taken from your home and taken to an undisclosed location. And sometimes they don't remember where they were taken, so then they don't even know if it was real.
My father had me separated from my mother and twin brother and administered a substance that was designed to sever my memory. Every time I was taken to or family vacation or trip to the cabin in the mountains, I was given this drug upon which everything would come flooding back. But when it wore off, so would the majority of my memories of it. And I would try to go to school, perform with my bands, be a regular person. But it broke me subconsciously. I knew something was very wrong, but I had internalized it on myself. And after a suicide attempt in 2015, I got away from the slavery I was in by taking testosterone, transitioning to male. I left Colorado in 2017 and started piecing together back memories that I had assumed were only nightmares in about 2020.
The ritual abuse is different than other forms of sex trafficking because it's more than just being forced to have sexual relations with someone against your will. It's sacrifices of animals and people. It's in the middle of the night being taken from your home and taken to an undisclosed location. And sometimes they don't remember where they were taken, so then they don't even know if it was real.
I think it was David Icke who woke me up to the ancient cults and the bloodlines that continue to these generations. And I think you're the first survivor, perhaps, who's actually detailed how that has continued over the ages. So if you could maybe expand on that a little bit, I think the viewers would find this fascinating.
What specifically would you like expanded on?
So what was the cult that you mentioned earlier, the ancient one?
The cult of Baal, B-A-L.
Yes.
B-A-L.
Yep.
I know very little about it. My family masqueraded themselves as Jewish publicly. But behind closed doors, at Passover dinners, when I was drugged, would admit, we are Satanists.
The video clip you're watching is titled, Romance of a People, Baby Sacrificed to Idol Molech. This event occurred at the Chicago's World Fair in 1933. It was a Jewish historical pageant in which over 150,000 Jews were present and participated in this demonic ceremony. The baby sacrifice scene is explicitly described in archive records. This is the Getty's catalog entry which explicitly describes a false idol Moloch, a priest holding wrapped up baby aloft for sacrifice. He throws baby into statue and you can hear Cass screaming. The 1948ers is a reenactment of Moloch child sacrifice scene as part of the pageant. Whether someone later attempts to label this as theatrical or stage does not change what was publicly performed. I want to be clear, staging the rite is still practicing the rite. The video clip you just watched is titled Romance of a People, Baby Sacrificed to Idol Molech. This event occurred at the Chicago's World Fair in 1933. It was a Jewish historical pageant in which over 150,000 Jews were present and participated in this demonic ceremony. Should we be surprised at this Molech child sacrificial ritual? Should we be surprised seeing an image of Molech seated on a throne, and to add insult to injury, the tablets of the Ten Commandments behind the idol? I'm going to prove to you that this is what Judaism promotes. Let's start with the following source by R.J. Zoe Werblowski and Jeffrey Wigeter, the Oxford Dictionary of the Jewish Religion entry defining Molech and the worship of Molech. It reads, Molech, Semitic deity worshipped in biblical times, known from Ugaritic and Mesopotamian sources as Moloch. It is likely that Molech figured among the Chthonic gods, that is, those associated with death and the underworld. According to biblical tradition, Molech was worshipped by means of child sacrifice, a practice abhorred and strictly forbidden by Israelite belief and law. Child sacrifice is condemned in the Bible, without mention of the god Molech, as a characteristically repulsive form of Canaanite religion to be shunned by the Israelites. Explicit prohibitions against the worship of Molech are found in Leviticus chapter 18 verse 21 and chapter 20 verses 2 through 5. Sacrificing to Molech is called whoring after him. It desecrates God's name and pollutes his sanctuary. The penalty is death by stoning for the perpetrator and all of his followers. If the court fails to carry out the sentence, the perpetrator and his family are liable to divine punishment. Let's revisit a key deceptive quote from this source. Child sacrifice is condemned in the Bible without mention of the god Molech. This sentence is deceptive by construction. This wording creates a false separation that the Torah itself does not make. The deception is in the phrase without mention of the god Molech. This entry subtly suggests that some child sacrifice is condemned generically, but Molech-specific worship is a different or narrower issue. The Bible condemns child sacrifice, and when it names Molech, it is naming the same act, not a different category. Let's see if we can confirm whether or not the Bible omits Molech when it condemns child sacrifice. Leviticus chapter 18 verse 21 says, And thou shalt not let any of thy seed pass through the fire to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh. I just read from the King James Bible version, but let's confirm this with the Tanakh. And thou shalt not give any of thy seed to set them apart to Molech, neither shalt thou profane the name of thy Elohim. I am Yahweh. Let's go to another rabbinical source to further prove that Judaism allows the worship and sacrificing to Molech. Let's go to the Talmud Sanhedrin 64a. It says, Mishnah, he who gives of his seed to Molech incurs no punishment unless he delivers it to Molech and causes it to pass through the fire. If he gave it to Molech but did not cause it to pass through the fire or the reverse, he incurs no penalty unless he does both. Gemara, the Mishnah teaches idolatry and giving to Moloch. Rabin said, our Mishnah is in accordance with the view that Moloch worship is not idolatry. For it has been taught, if one causes his seed to pass through the fire, whether to Moloch or to any other idol, he is liable to death. Our Eleazar, son of our Simeon, said, if to Moloch he is liable, if to another idol he is not. What the Mishnah is doing with the quote, he who gives of his seed to Moloch incurs no punishment unless he delivers it to Molech and causes it to pass through the fire. This entry, and more specifically, this quote introduces a double technical requirement: delivery to Molech and passing through fire. If only one occurs, then there's no penalty. The more serious problem is, in the Gemara, is this quote, being said, our Mishnah is in accordance with the view that Molech worship is not idolatry. This is the critical line. It explicitly states that one rabbinic position holds: Molech worship is not idolatry. That is a direct theological reclassification. The real shift taking place in Sanhedrin 64a. The Torah frames the offense as an absolute betrayal of Yahweh. The Mishnah reframes the offense as a narrowly defined cultic crime with procedural requirements. The Gemara then goes further and states openly, Molech worship is not idolatry. This is not an accurate interpretation of Leviticus. It is a blatant deception by way of reclassification. Not only does Judaism, by way of the Talmud, endorses the worship and sacrifices to Molech, but this religious system promotes the usage of charms by way of eggs. Sanhedrin 101a reads, quote, our rabbis taught it is permitted to consult by a charm the spirits of oil or eggs, but that they give false answers. Incantations are made over oil contained in a vessel, but not in the hand. Therefore, one may anoint with the latter, but not with the former.
I know from other victims, and also from my memories, senior people participate in the ritual abuse. Across the country, doctors, elected rabbis, police officers, educators, and also some members of Knesset, and also former members of Knesset, they took part in this abuse from both sides of the political spectrum. Right now, it is understood that there are several members of Knesset active and former. A story will be published. I know about much more people. I hope you understood. Obviously, if people are against such strong people, especially when it comes to such vulnerabilities, most of the victims are of not speaking, so it's clear to me because, to me, they are a drop in the ocean of thousands of victims of the ritual abuses in Israel.
30 men, one 16-year-old girl. It's the crime that's shocking the nation. Now, thousands are protesting the gang rape, which allegedly took place in an Eilat hotel room.
I'm here tonight to protest the awful rape of a 16-year-old girl in Eilat by 30 men and the entire rape culture that exists in this country and around the world.
Israel is, a haven for pedophiles. Tens of thousands of pedophiles have been given refuge inside Israel. But the most recent report was, in fact, an investigation. And I think this is important to make this point. These investigations are being carried out by Israeli media. This isn't something that has been concocted external to Israel. And the recent investigation by Israel Hayom into the ritual gang rape by, again, members of the educational community, the religious instruction community, so rabbis, leaders of the community, family members and relatives. This is another very important point to be made. And many of these gang rapes were conducted under some kind of macabre religious ceremony.
A CBS News investigation has uncovered a loophole that allows accused and convicted American pedophiles to escape justice by moving to Israel. So Ian Lee has been following this for more than a year, and he traveled to Israel for this investigation. He worked with a group that tracks people accused of sex crimes, which estimates dozens of Americans have used this loophole.
So, he's 6'2".
We are on a stakeout looking for this man, Jimmy Julius Caro, 48 years old and wanted on charges of sexually assaulting a 9-year-old girl in Oregon back in 2000 and a 5-year-old girl in Israel in 2001. He's considered dangerous. But these photos are a few years old, so we don't know if he'll look the same. He remains elusive. Previous attempts to capture him have failed.
Obviously, the fear that he would somehow figure out that anyone's looking for him and bolt. He just called his number.
Shauna Aronson got a tip that Caro's expected at this clinic near Tel Aviv.
Who's going to call the
She's
police?
with JCW, Jewish Community Watch, an organization that hunts down accused pedophiles who flee to Israel from the U.S., exploiting a process called Law of Return, whereby any Jewish person can move to Israel and automatically gain citizenship. The ease with which pedophiles seem able to use this law as an escape route haunts victims like Mendy Hall, who says he was abused from age 8 by a teacher at an Orthodox Jewish school in Los Angeles.
So your classroom is right here. How does it feel being back?
I was very anxious and, stressed coming back here, and a lot of memories coming through my mind.
Memories of his alleged abuser, Mordechai Yom Tov, who taught him Hebrew studies when he was just 8 years old.
So in the beginning, he would just rub me outside of my pants, and then I would say, 3 or 4 months later, he started going in.
Reaching down your pants?
Yeah, it's reaching down.
Why did you feel like you couldn't tell anyone?
I was scared, I was ashamed. I just didn't know what people would think of me and the whole situation.
Yom Tov pled guilty in 2002 to sexually abusing and committing lewd acts against 3 other boys. He served jail time, but when he was released, he violated his probation and, according to JCW, fled to Israel with help from individuals within the Orthodox Jewish community. JCW tracked Yom Tov down and confronted him with a hidden camera in Jerusalem, where he admitted to illegally fleeing the United States with help and using a fake passport to enter Israel.
I was supposed to stay for 5 years in the same city. I was supposed to join on site research. I was supposed to go every 2 weeks to the police station. I left within a week later.
He had this message for his victims.
I'm very, very, very sorry.
The other person in this video is Meir Seawald, the founder of Jewish Community Watch. He tells CBS News Yom Tov's case isn't uncommon in the Orthodox community.
The same thing that's going on in the Catholic Church right now around the world, the exact same thing happens in our community. The rabbis say it's, you know what, he promised he's going to go for therapy, he's never going to do it again. Boom, he's in another community. A few years later, he's at the same thing, and we hear more allegations that the person continued to abuse children.
And often, those abusers end up in Israel.
An Israeli official has been indicted by a Clark County grand jury. News 3's James King joins us from the live desk with the crime that he's believed to have committed and what is next. James?
Marie, the indictment of Israeli official Tom Alexandrovich is related to a sex sting operation conducted by Metro Police and other agencies. He was one of 8 suspects arrested in that operation. Now, according to those arrest reports, he's accused of using online platforms to meet a juvenile in Las Vegas. Today, he was indicted for luring children with the use of technology with the intent to engage in sex. Alexandrovich was arrested on August 6th after allegedly attempting to meet a 15-year-old girl and was then taken into custody but released the following day after posting a $10,000 bail. Now, News 3 spoke with attorney Ron Zambrano prior to the Israeli official's first scheduled appearance in court, who said that even if he is found guilty, it's unlikely he'll serve time in the U.S.
Put the car in park. Let me see your hands. Put them on the steering wheel. Get out of the car. Get out of the car. Over here. Hands behind your back.
Well, that is an Israeli government official as police arrest him as part of a sex sting. That official was in town for a cybersecurity conference, now facing a sex-related charge.
So prosecutors say he drove to a park to meet a 15-year-old girl.
And videos and evidence the 80s Now investigators obtained show what was said in those chats before police detained him and he left the country.
Get out of the car. Over here. Hands behind your back.
This is the moment Henderson police took 38-year-old Tom Alexandrovich into custody. Alexandrovich, an Israeli government official, accused of meeting a young girl for sex.
You want to grab the cell phone in a minute?
Police say Alexandrovich was in town for a cybersecurity conference. Prosecutors say he drove from his hotel all the way to a park in Henderson to meet that girl, who was really an FBI agent working undercover as part of a sex sting.
You're going to the station, so you have to put your handcuffs.
Police say Alexandrovich met the decoy on a dating app, the conversation then moving over to WhatsApp. Grand jury transcripts revealing in that conversation, the undercover agent told Alexandrovich she was, quote, only 15, and that she's, quote, too young to get into most places. The decoy later asking Alexandrovich to, quote, bring condoms. With the agreement, they meet at the park.
He posted that bond before any judge.
Alexandrovich's attorneys telling a judge during a hearing in September that the app where the conversation began actually requires users be over 18. Transcripts also revealing Alexandrovich felt, quote, pushed when condoms came into the conversation.
Now, hours after his arrest, Alexandrovich posted $10,000 bail, never saw a judge, and left the country.
Artyom
Alexandrovich,
38, a senior employee of Israel's National Cybersecurity Quarter, was among 8 men arrested in Vegas, an FBI joint operation targeting online sexual exploitation of minors, with police stating, "We would like to remind parents to discuss with their children the dangers of engaging with strangers online." Alexandrovich, charged with felony counts of luring a child with a computer for sex acts, was booked at the Henderson Detention Center and released on $10,000 bail, returning to Israel and placed on leave. As a cyber director noted, the employee updated the directorate that during his trip to the United States, he was questioned by the U.S. authorities on matters unrelated to his work, and he returned to Israel at the planned time of return. The operation conducted after 2 weeks also arrested David and a few other guys, all these other names. Go ahead, Ben.
So, by the way, this isn't just some low-level tech nerd. This is the acting head of data and AI for Israel's National Cyber Directorate. Okay, he works directly under Bibi Netanyahu, okay? And that arrest, Pat, that sting operation, which was the FBI, Homeland Security, and Nevada Police, they targeted these sex predators. He was in town. Remember that time we were in Vegas? They were doing that hacker, black hat hacker. It's the biggest hacker conference in the world. He was there. He's a part of AI. He was booked at Henderson Detention Center and charged with a felony for luring a child online for sex. Okay, that normally goes from 1 year to 20 years in prison. But the next day, and just like I think a couple of the guys as well, because there's 8 of them, posted a $10,000 bond. And despite he has zero diplomatic immunity, he got to go back to Israel. Netanyahu's office put out a statement saying that he was not arrested. He was only questioned, but multiple sources, guys, The Guardian, Jerusalem Post, Israel, Times of Israel, and all confirmed, everybody, including the Henderson County. Rob, you have the police actual arrest that I put? That's the guy. That's him. Okay, he was really booked. This is no BS hearsay. He wasn't the only one caught. Among the other suspects was Pastor Neil Harrison Creasy of Redemption Church in Las Vegas. Weird. He was also arrested in the sting. He resigned from his church shortly after being released from the same $10,000 bond. Here's my only problem, guys. If you're a foreign national and you're trying to lure a child in America to have sex, you don't post bail and leave. Normally, Pat, because I did a lot of research, your passport is seized, your travel is restricted, and you're considered a flight risk, okay? The fact that he was let to go back to Israel within 24 hours means somebody, federal government, I don't know, Rob, can we try to find out who is the district attorney of Henderson County? And that's actually a really good question, in Las Vegas. It's just weird, Pat. You can't, none of those other guys, even if they posted bail, you can't leave the country. Because who's to say that you're not going to be able to come back? You can't just leave. They're supposed to take your Tom, do you know, like, you're supposed to take your passport.
There's flight risk. Bail is directly related to flight risk. Like Diddy, they said he's got all these private planes. He could go to Belize. He could go to somewhere. Remember that?
In a unanimous decision, New York City's Department of Health agreed parents must first give their written consent before allowing Moyles to perform a controversial part of the Jewish circumcision ritual.
We have clearly identified that one specific procedure that's performed as part of some circumcisions, what we're calling direct oral suction, can be transmitting infections to infants.
The new regulations, the first in the country, come after health officials identified 11 babies who contracted herpes from the oral part of the circumcision. 2 of them died. The Centers for Disease Control has stated the procedure is not safe.
Not only is it a safe method, it's the safest method.
Rabbi William Handler calls this a direct attack on the ultra-Orthodox Jewish community and its customs, and says government is overstepping its bounds. Cantor Philip Sherman says he's performed more than 20,000 circumcisions, 6 just today. He says this is not about Jewish tradition, but rather everyone's well-being.
Now, today, we know that germs can be transferred, diseases can be transferred from the baby to the moil, from the moil to the baby. So therefore, you can continue this custom by using a sterile tube, a gauze pad, and the rest of the bris is fine.
Health officials say it is going to be very difficult to enforce these regulations. They say that's because they really can't monitor moils as they perform circumcisions. They say it is first going to take a complaint from someone before they can take any action.
So, Ian, obviously, when the Epstein files came out, the Epstein library on the DOJ's website, there were just millions of data points. And it's one thing to get all of this information. It's another thing to piece it all together. We know the island has gotten a lot of public attention. But, Ian, what do we know about this ranch property?
Yeah, so this Zorro Ranch is a sprawling ranch in New Mexico. Jeffrey Epstein bought it in 1993 and owned it until he passed. Now, when you look at the Epstein files, there are some parts of it that mention this ranch. And one in particular has a lot of people asking questions. And that mentions 2 foreign girls who were murdered and buried on that ranch.
Basically, they're telling people, if you're Mossad, you can get away with anything. The same thing that will happen with Tom Alexandrovich, the cybersecurity guy from Netanyahu's government who was arrested in Nevada for trying to lure a minor in an FBI stint operation, and he got off the hook. He traveled. He didn't even have to attend his trial. He did Zoom from Israel. And like Ori Solomon, just a couple of days ago, there was a biolab in Nevada that nobody is actually talking about. Actually, as a matter of fact, the mainstream media, they reported it, but they never mentioned his nationality as an Israeli who was running a biolab in Nevada that includes deadly viruses. If that was a Muslim, it would be like all over the news. So basically, Mr. Dershowitz is telling us, if you're Mossad, you have like an out of jail card. And you know what? Maybe he's right.
Or a CIA,
I'm
or a
actually
CIA
watching,
agent.
Sir,
That's true.
Mr. Allen, Mr. Dershowitz, I did not interrupt you a single second when you talked. So
I just wanted to
after
correct
you're
you.
done with your gaslighting, please let me finish. First of all, I think I'm now kind of leaning towards believing mainstream media, especially CBS and CNN under Barry Weiss and Larry Ellison. I mean, the evidence is there that he is actually a Russian asset. His girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was the daughter of a Mossad super spy. He was represented by you, Mr. Dershowitz, Israel's favorite lawyer, who you're also a lawyer to the Mossad, which, of course, everything you tell us will be true.
Jeffrey Epstein's bank account was called Baal, the ancient Canaanite deity which people would sacrifice their children to. A victim's diary shows that she was impregnated multiple times and forced to give birth for Ghislaine and Epstein. Israel is mentioned twice as much as Donald Trump in the new documents.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to discuss this administration's massive cover-up of the Epstein files in order to conceal President Trump's involvement. This cover-up reached its apex last month when Attorney General Pam Bondi falsely testified under oath before the House Judiciary Committee. The Attorney General testified, quote, "There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that," unquote. This is a lie. In the 3 million or so documents that the DOJ has disclosed to Congress under the Epstein Files Transparency Act, there is credible evidence that Donald Trump committed a crime. And that, of course, excludes the nearly 3 million pages that the DOJ is refusing to turn over. Donald Trump is mentioned thousands of times in the Epstein files. There are multiple allegations that he sexually assaulted young girls. But I want to focus on one victim's allegations that the FBI unquestionably found to be credible. The DOJ tried to hide reports of 3 of the 4 interviews that this victim gave to the FBI, but pressure from the media and Congress forced them to disclose them. And now we know why. She credibly accuses Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her when she was between 13 and 15. In each of her interviews, this victim recited the same account of her interaction with Donald Trump. On August 7th, 2019, she explained that she was between 13 and 15 when she was left alone with Donald Trump, who, quote, mentioned something to the effect of, "Let me teach you how little girls are supposed to be." Trump unzipped his pants and put her head down, quote, down to his penis, bit the S out of it. Trump struck the victim and said words to the effect of, "Get this little B the hell out of here." The victim advised that she bit Trump's penis because he disgusted her. She provided some additional details in the next interview 2 weeks later, and then a month later, she met again with the FBI and asked, quote, what the point would be of providing the information at this point in her life when there was a strong possibility nothing could be done about it. She didn't speak to the FBI again. But the FBI certainly found her story credible. In a 21-page PowerPoint presentation that the FBI made to prosecutors, they included this victim's testimony. They would not have done so if they did not find the evidence credible, which means that Attorney General Bondi lied when she stated under oath that there is no evidence that Donald Trump committed a crime. But we're just scratching the surface, because the Epstein files also reveal that Donald Trump has made false statements over the past quarter century about Jeffrey Epstein. We know in 2002 he called him a terrific guy and said, quote, it is even said that he likes beautiful women as much as I do, and many of them are on the younger side. In a birthday card, 2003, that Donald Trump gave to Jeffrey Epstein for his 50th birthday, Donald wrote for himself that we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Enigmas never aged. Have you noticed that? A pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday. And may every day be another wonderful secret. But in that same year, Palm Beach County opened an investigation into Epstein that eventually was turned over to the FBI. The investigation became public in 2006, and the Palm Beach County police chief received a call quickly after from Donald Trump, where Trump told him, thank goodness you're stopping him. Everyone has known he's been doing this. What innocent person calls the police chief about an investigation upon just learning about it? The recent documents also show that Jeffrey Epstein emailed Ghislaine Maxwell and said, quote, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Redacted victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Trump also denied that he ever went on Epstein's plane. But of course, the Southern District of New York said that he was on his plane 8 times, often with young women. The reason why this matters is because we don't have half of the Epstein files. And if the Attorney General is covering this up in such a degree that she is redacting things from Congress, that she then redacting things from the public that she then shows to Congress, what else is she covering up? And I would just show that this document here was redacted to the public, it was unredacted to Congress, and it completely disputes everything that Donald Trump has said about Jeffrey Epstein, about what he knew about the allegations, about his disgusting behavior, about whether he'd ever been to Epstein's house, saying, I may have been there with my wife. Asked if any young girls were there. No. He may have had children of guests, but that's it. Well, we know that's not the case. Now, why is this important? Because if the Attorney General is covering up this information that she then reveals to Congress, what else is she covering up about Donald Trump's involvement in the Epstein files?
Here he is discussing with Roger Schank, a Jewish American academic and hedge fund worker, saying Jews create vast fortunes by manipulating markets and creating financial speculation and exploiting labor. He says, let the Goyim deal in the real world. In a discussion with the Rothschild family, Epstein says if they overthrew the Ukrainian government, there would be great opportunities. The Rothschild family paid Epstein $25 million for certain algorithms. While talking to Peggy Seigel, August 7th of 2010, she asks if an event is going to be 100% Jewish. He says no, they'll have Goyim in abundance. But don't worry, they're just brilliant wasps from JP Morgan. Joshua Finkelstein, BlackRock's Larry Finkelstein's son, is accused of not having any respect for non-Jews, seeing them as not human. This is from his ex-girlfriend, Svetlana. He pressures her to have an abortion. In 2017, Epstein has a conversation talking about if you want to hire the best people, you have to hire only Jews. Only hire those who can prove they are genetically Jewish. Maria Farmer, one of the first victims to come out and name Epstein.
I wasn't allowed to go get food. And when I called Ghislaine and asked why I couldn't eat there, she said, it's a Jewish country club. You're not Jewish. They're not going to serve you. They, honest to God, think their DNA is better than everybody else's.
Said that their operation was motivated by Jewish supremacy.
Now, the Epstein files are public. People can read them. People can see the horrible stuff that you, again, are gaslighting us. In your own word, you said that he's not a pedophile because he liked 15 and 16 years old, but not 11 and 12 years old.
No, I said 17 and 10 months.
People can
17
read,
and 10
you
months.
can read the ages of the kids in the emails. They can read about the pizza, the ice cream, the beef jerky.
Convicted.
And you can see the connection with Israel. And yet, here you are again, gaslighting us. This is your playbook, attacking the victims.
It's called
the Palestinians, Hamas,
It's
terrorists.
called truth.
Epstein victims, liars, prostitutes, drama students, and of course,
Well, you say Hamas are not
anti-Semitic.
terrorists?
You have a history
Well, you say
of
Hamas are
hiring
not
investigators to dig through teenage girls at MySpace pages looking for marijuana. That's
what lawyers
do. You
do.
called a 16-year-old girl a thief in the Daily Mail. You got Epstein 13 months in county jail with work release for abusing 34 victims.
I shared several videos with you that expose disturbing claims of ritualistic sexual abuse among the group I refer to as the 1948ers. These included clips discussing the controversial and mysterious death of the daughter of Ored Struk, a former Israeli prime minister, who publicly accused her parents of abusing her as a child through what she described as ritual sexual practices within their community. Now, I want to shift your attention to another widely recognized and deeply influential historical event, what is commonly referred to as the Holocaust.
So, I remember my father, we both knew a person who had the tattoo. The only place there were tattoos were Auschwitz.
Auschwitz,
It was
yeah.
the only camp where they had the tattoos. And I said to my father about this person, and my father had the tattoo. I always knew the number. It was like 028128, something like that. I had memorized the number, but now I've forgotten. I said to my father, I said, do you think he was in Auschwitz? And my father said, no. And my father was not a conspiracy person.
Yeah.
No, he just said very matter-of-factly, non-judgmentally. He just said no. And I said to my father, I asked my father, so where did he get the number? And my father said, and I'm quoting him now, he said, well, after the war, some people took it off and some people put it on.
These reduced numbers are confirmed with the article titled, Poland Agrees to Change Auschwitz Tablets, published on June 17, 1992. It reads, after 50 years of deflecting the requests of Jewish groups, the Polish government has agreed to change the wording on stone tablets at Auschwitz and Birkenau, the adjacent Nazi camps where more than 1 million Jews died during World War II. The move follows decades of appeals by Jewish groups who say the current plaques do not fully reflect the suffering of Jews there and focus too heavily on the camp's non-Jewish victims. While thousands of non-Jews were among the estimated 1.5 million killed at Auschwitz, the victims were predominantly Jewish. Key quote from the actual updated Auschwitz tablets, the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe. This is an extremely high reduction of 2.5 million from the total 6 million number that's rehearsed.
And you said on Patrick Bet-David's podcast as well, they play the victim card so effing much about Jewish people. I mean, do you not understand why Jewish people might feel a sense of victimhood, given that 6 million of them were killed in World War II by a genocidal monster in the Holocaust? Do you not understand why that might make Jewish people feel that, yes, they have indeed been victims?
Yeah, I mean, that figure's been revised, but you know, I believe that Jewish supremacy is the greatest threat to America, and I think it's the greatest threat to the world today. I truly believe that.
What do you mean the figure's been revised? What do you mean?
Well, they said that it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million, so they've revised the figure. Well, they said that it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million, so they've revised the figure. it was 4 million that died in Auschwitz, and then they said it was down to 1 million, so they've revised the figure.
Now, I want to shift your attention to another widely recognized and deeply influential historical event, what is commonly referred to as the Holocaust. Question: what is a Holocaust? More specifically, what is the meaning of the word Holocaust? The Etymological Online Dictionary says Holocaust, mid-13th century, sacrifice by fire, burnt offering from Old French Holocaust, or directly from late Latin Holocaustum, from Greek holocauston, a thing wholly burnt, neuter of holocaustos, burned whole, from holos whole plus kaustos, verbal adjective of kain to burn. Originally a Bible word for burnt offerings, given wider figurative sense of massacre, destruction of a large number of persons from 1670s. The Holocaust Nazi genocide of European Jews in World War II, first recorded 1957, earlier known in Hebrew as Shoah, catastrophe. The word itself was used in English in reference to Hitler's Jewish policies from 1942, but not as a proper name for them. English chronicler Richard of Devizes, in his contemporary account of the coronation of Richard I in 1189, used the word Holocaust when he described the mass murder of the Jews of London, although he meant it as a sacrificial offering. According to etymology, the word Holocaust comes from the Greek holocauston, meaning wholly burned. That term made its way into Latin, then Old French, and eventually into English. By the 13th century, it was already being used as a biblical term, a translation for what was called a burnt offering. But when we go back to the original Hebrew, the picture changes. The Hebrew, or should I say, according to the Israeli language, the word is olah, or in the true ancient Hebrew, it's pronounced Allah. It means a step, or collectively, stairs. As ascending, usually, a holocaust is going up in smoke. This word also means ascent, burnt offering sacrifice go up to. And as the lexicon shows, Ola or Allah comes from the primitive root Allah, which means to ascend intransitively, in other words, be high, or actively, in other words, mount. Literal and figurative, in other words, as follow: arise, arise up. Bring, in other words, bring up, carry up. Grow, in other words, grow over increase. Mount up, raise, recover, restore. Rise, in other words, make to rise up. Spring, begin to spring up. Entry number 1 of this definition says to go up, ascend, climb. So at its core, Olah or Allah is not about burning. It is about ascent. It is that which goes up. I want to point out that phrase or entry, Holocaust is going up in smoke, is not an original meaning of the ancient Hebrew word, but this is a very interpretive bridge. A later attempt to reconcile the Hebrew school of thought of ascent or ascend with the Greek placing the point of emphasis on burning, and this is where the shift happens. The Hebrew focuses on movement upwards toward the Most High. The Greek shifts the focus to the complete consumption by fire. That shift is not small. It actually changes the original intent and meaning applied to the Hebrew word entirely. Now fast forward. By the 1600s, the English word Holocaust had already moved well beyond Scripture. It was being used to describe large-scale destruction, mass death, often involving fire. By the 1800s and early 1900s, writers and political figures were using it in that broader sense. Then, in the mid-20th century, the word takes on a new role. It becomes the Holocaust, capitalized, fixed, and now assigned to one specific people and historical event: the suppression of 1948ers during World War II. And from that point forward, the word is no longer general. It is specific, institutionalized, defined, but the older meanings never disappeared. Descriptors such as wholly burned, burnt offering, and sacrifice by fire, and this is a major problem.
The 30th of January, 1933, Germany. Adolf Hitler is appointed Chancellor of Germany, and the Nazi regime quickly begins to restrict the civil and human rights of the Jews and other individuals deemed to be enemies of the state, and opens the first concentration camp, Dachau, situated near Munich. The regime targets not only the Jews and political prisoners, but also Afro-Germans, who are discriminated against and persecuted. Such was the case of Yosef Nassi, a black expatriate portrait artist of Jewish descent who held a US passport. In 1942, Nassi was arrested in German-occupied Belgium as an enemy alien. He was then interned and held for 7 months in the Beverloo transit camp. He was later transferred to Germany, where he spent the rest of the war in Laufen internment camp and its subcamp Tittmoning, both located in Upper Bavaria.
Updated Auschwitz tablets say the Nazis murdered about 1.5 million men, women, and children, mainly Jews from various countries of Europe. This means that there were others, and more specifically, Negroes who suffered as well. So how is it that a group of people can hijack a word and make it theirs? They've successively did this with words such as Semitic or Shemitic. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not suggesting that the people who suffered were part of any kind of sacrifice. I am not minimizing the tragedy, and I am not redefining what happened. What I am pointing out is something linguistic. Because when a word that historically carried sacrificial meaning becomes the label for a mass human tragedy, it can, whether intended or not, create an indirect association with human sacrifice. And that distinction matters. When we go back to the scriptures, the line is clear. The Olah or Allah, the so-called burnt offering, is a lawful animal offering directed toward the Most High. But human sacrifice, especially the act of passing children through fire to the goat demon Molech, is condemned in the strongest terms. It is never equated with a lawful offering, but the Talmud allows this behavior. So the ancient framework makes a strict separation. There is no category where human beings are to be offered. Which brings us back to the present. If the ancient texts are careful to separate these ideas, but modern language uses a word with sacrificial roots to describe human destruction, then it is reasonable to ask if this word was modified and selected to purposely push an agenda. My questions are not about rewriting history. It is about examining truth, because words shape perception. And when a word carries layers, especially layers tied to fire, sacrifice, and total consumption, we have to be willing to ask, why? What is the purpose of the so-called Greater Israel?
Ladies and gentlemen, as Israel defends itself against Iran in the Seven Front War, the line separating the blessing and the curse could not be more clear. This is the map I presented here last year. It's a map of a blessing. It shows Israel and its Arab partners forming a land bridge connecting Asia and Europe between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. Across this bridge, we will lay rail lines, energy pipelines, fiber optic cables, and this will serve the betterment of 2 billion people. Now look at this second map. It's a map. Look at the second map. It's a map of a curse. It's a map of an arc of terror that Iran has created and imposed from the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean. Iran's malignant arc has shut down international waterways. It cuts off trade. It destroys millions, destroys nations from within, and inflicts misery on millions. On the one hand, a bright blessing, a future of hope. On the other hand, a dark future of despair.
You know, when I'm at, nobody asked what did it cost to win World War II. You just had to win. So whatever it costs to finish this is worth it.
Earlier today, CENTCOM shared the news that 3 U.S. military service members have been killed in action. As one nation, we grieve for the true American patriots who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, even as we continue the righteous mission for which they gave their lives. We pray for the full recovery of the wounded and send our immense love and eternal gratitude to the families of the fallen. And sadly, there will likely be more. Before it ends, that's the way it is.
Are United States soldiers being used as human sacrifices or bloodshed as part of a satanic ritual? After all, each soldier did pledge their lives as collateral to the government. Have we been programmed through secret societies such as Freemasonry, fraternities and sororities and religious institutions to directly or indirectly embrace human sacrifices? After all, pledging simply means using life as collateral to obtain benefits and privileges. Is there an agenda by the elites who use Jeffrey Epstein as a tool to carry out an ultimate sacrificial offering to further their perverted cause?
Flames rise in Tehran as a horned figure burns in the heart of revolution rallies. Why were statues of the ancient deity Baal set alight across Iran? From biblical symbolism to modern conspiracy theories, this fiery spectacle is about far more than history. Iranian state-organized rallies marking the anniversary of Iran's 1979 Islamic Revolution took an unusual turn this week as demonstrators in several cities set fire to large statues depicting a horned, bull-headed figure identified by organizers as Baal, an ancient deity referenced in biblical and Islamic tradition. According to Iranian media, the coordinated burnings were framed as a symbolic protest against what organizers described as moral corruption in the West. Some of the events were reported to have taken place simultaneously in different cities. Images circulated online showed a towering bull-headed effigy engulfed in flames in Tehran's Azadi Square. In some instances, the displays included additional imagery, such as the number 666, and references to US President Donald Trump.
Bill Ackman wants me imprisoned, apparently, for suggesting that American sons and daughters should object to being slaughtered for Israel. Why so triggered? Perhaps because this entire war has been engineered by Israel. Maybe it's that. Donald Trump has very clearly betrayed the American people. You need to accept that. I've had to accept that. He is very clearly not the commander of the armed forces. Bibi Netanyahu is. Miriam Adelson is. And I believe that Charlie Kirk was the first casualty of the war in Iran. And it's also my belief that he was intentionally sacrificed by those who practice occult worship. I'm going to explain to you guys what I mean by that.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen. Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.